Let me start by giving just a thumbnail sketch real quick. I actually started off my professional life as an accountant. Spent the first 5 or 6 years of my career working for companies like British Gas, USA Waste, big regional accounting firm, as well as waste management. And then I spent a number of years getting into the F&A side of recruiting until about 2017, when I realized that IT and tech are two different animals, although they're interrelated, somewhat independent or dependent on each other. And I got into the tech recruiting world. And most of the time that I spend now, most of my clients are, I wouldn't say tech companies in the sense that you got to go to the valley to find them, but they're tech companies in the sense that they're trying to figure out how to use data science, how to bring it forward in their business, how to lever machine learning, and how to lever this really kind of astonishing tech that's hitting the market, as known as generative AI. So I'd like to share a little bit with you all today about an overview of what it is and isn't, but the impact it's having on companies and specifically on finance and accounting organizations, and also finish with talking some about, as a candidate, how does it impact you and how can you use it the best way for whatever your job search goals might be. So hopefully everybody can see the screen. We're sharing about AI's impact on recruiting. And we're gonna, there we go, start moving things forward. So from my perspective as a recruiter, the question is, how does this new technology, how does AI make recruitment better? There's a couple of things to know first. First off, artificial intelligence, the theory of it has been around since somewhere back in the 1950s. It's not a novel concept, but it's only been in the past handful of years that we've developed enough computing power to make it work. So everything you see coming out now with ChatGPT, Google's coming out with Duo. I think Microsoft is coming out with a system they call Bard. And there's a bunch of others out there that are bubbling up. These are all generative AI packages that have taken years of development and frankly couldn't have existed probably 4 or 5 years ago, at least not at this scale. It eats up a ton of computing cycles, a ton of computing power. And really today, even though from an academic standpoint, when we look at AI, there are different steps, if you will, in its evolution. Machine learning is the one that everybody hears about or has heard about the most until recently, right? So machine learning is really primarily used for static analysis, analytics. It has to have structured data. It's not really meant to synthesize answers or content and things of that nature, but rather to give you the information you need to make decisions. And now what we've got into is this generative AI, kind of the next step in the development of AI, where it's predictive. It evolves based on your inputs, on feedbacks, corrections, experience, and it can produce novel content, but keep in mind that it's really synthesized content. And it also can be trained, because it uses adaptive algorithms, by how you use the model and the behavior it experiences, if I can put it that way. There's a bubble over on the right side of the screen called theory of the mind. That is theoretically the next big evolutionary leap in AI. Theory of the mind is an AI that can converse with you, that can comprehend emotions. And that is a long, long way off. However, keep in mind that standing behind the AI tech that's out there today is Moore's Law. Moore's Law simply states that the available computing power in the world theoretically doubles every 2 years. So if you go way back to the original computers that started surfacing World War II and right after World War II, so the late 40s and 50s, every couple of years that computing power doubled. So it's growing exponentially. Theory of the mind, I think, is a ways off, but it might be closer than some of us would like it to be. Or as I tell some people, just in a fit of being facetious, be prepared when we achieve that to be talking to our robot bosses. But that's not today, and that may not be yet for decades. We just don't know yet. Currently, AI has several applications, and you all have seen this. From a recruiting perspective, talent acquisition perspective, we use AI assisted sourcing and search all the time. I'm sitting on a database right now in my applicant tracking system that globally has about 1 million profiles in it, or 1 billion rather profiles in it. It would be very hard to go through, although I can do it using traditional Boolean searches, which is something that we would probably more likely assign to the machine learning side of things, which forms the basis for generative AI. But we are able to switch back and forth between using a traditional Boolean search as well as using a more dynamic AI search where the AI learns what I like to look for in my searches. So, for example, if I type in that I'm looking for a CPA and my clients in Houston, or my clients in New York, or my clients in Illinois, it will figure out over time if I'm always biased towards candidates that have their CPA license in that specific state without me telling it, because it'll learn from experience. It will notice that I'm choosing these options, one set of options over another. Everybody's really big right now in the content creation, using it for creative writing, translation, conversational agents, marketing and advertising. I had a CTO level candidate in November, December of last year who self-taught Python and developed his own machine learning models. And he decided to go a step further when he didn't get the role we were working on. And he ended up developing his own AI. And it's part conversational agent and part inbound, outbound chatbot for sales. And he niched up in the cannabis industry. So if you go into a dispensary in Colorado and you interface with a kiosk, a retail kiosk, there's a good chance that Barkey AI is what's running that side of the conversation with you. So it's an interesting thing that now I don't need somebody sitting at the counter per se. I don't need all this help because from a business perspective, his first month of deploying Barkey AI, I think their retail sales bumped up about 37% in the first 30 days. I did tell him, however, he should have a second kiosk next to it to distribute brownies and Cheetos, but I don't think that ever became a reality. That's a little cannabis industry humor for anybody who's interested. Speech to text, text to speech. We've seen that. It's been around for a while, but with generative AI, it's gotten much cleaner. And of course, knowledge management, managing databases, curating information, which is one of the big things because AI does have limits. But what we can do now from a recruiting perspective is working a lot smarter. So the old way, like I mentioned before, on the left side of the screen is we can use various filters that are preset, Boolean searches, which the search strings could be huge to identify candidates. And then we can go through lists and figure out this person goes short list, this person goes long list. And depending on the job, it lists 2 to 8 hours per job here. I can tell you as a third-party recruiter, 100% of our current business is on the retained side, but we don't do retained in the traditional sense for C-suite per se. We're more focused in that spot between tech candidates making between 150 and 350,000 a year. So going through and identifying candidates for a short list and long list on our side, especially with a lot of the technical qualifications we needed to have, 2 to 8 hours is kind of conservative. We try to limit our number of clients that are active at any given time just because it always took so much work, so much time, it was so labor intensive. But now, and for the past couple of years with our ATS, we lever the AI where it looks at the job, it looks at the hiring company, it looks at descriptives that we put in for the hiring team, the manager, and the culture. And it doesn't just go out and search a database or scrub the web. It comes in and actually ranks the candidates based on what it has learned is important to us under that subset of job and customer. And I can kick it off and do that, refine it a little bit on the parameters, and probably knock it out in half hour, sometimes a little bit longer, just depending. And the same thing too, if we were going to write an email or make a phone call, as you know, really good talent acquisition professionals spend a lot of time interacting with people. Now that can be on email, that can be via text, that can be via social media, that can be face-to-face on the phone, but it takes a lot of time. What we do now is once we select our candidates on our short and long lists, we simply hit another button, and what we use in our system called Loxo Outreach GPT, it actually produces an entire outreach sequence for the long list and short list for us. So I can click a button and in a heartbeat or two have 5 steps, 10 steps, whatever I want of outreach that combines social media, email, text, phone sequences where it reminds me to call at a certain time and gives me the message to take to the candidate at that time in order to get their attention and draw them into our process and into our funnel as far as the interview process goes. So it says 30 seconds per job. I've hit that button many times. I don't think I've had any, maybe several that went 15, 20 seconds. Most are done in just a handful of seconds. So when you think about it, from a recruiting labor-intensive perspective, tedious perspective, we don't have to sit there and craft all this or go find the last set of emails we did and copy and paste over. What we have to do is go in with the recognition that AI is going to give us about 80% of what we need. And then we need to go in, provide oversight, editorial oversight, if I can put it that way, to correct any syntax issues, to correct for the persona or how it sounds, how it comes across. A lot of the first few iterations we did, it came across very, very salesy and frankly, very, very juvenile. And we had to teach it, if you will, to speak in a different voice. Sometimes to use different verbiage and certainly, and this is a real you got to be a stickler about this, because AI is synthesizing from data sets it's been fed. It can do and output some crazy things. It can effectively, what you and I would call lie, not because it recognizes right from wrong in that respect, but just because it thinks it's doing what you asked it to do. So you may have read an article that was out, oh goodness, earlier this summer about an attorney, and I don't know if it's 100% accurate, but it's pretty close from what I've been told, about an attorney who let ChatGPT produce a brief for him at a federal level in a U.S. district court. And he didn't read it, and he turned it into the judge. Judge read it, and the judge tried to find the precedent that the brief quoted. It didn't exist, and then he twigged to the fact that the U.S. district court that apparently this precedent was developed in didn't exist. The AI had just made it up. So I don't know what, there's 115 district courts, whatever the number is, and it was from the 116th district court. And here was this precedent which would have won the case, but it was all fantasy. And of course, you can imagine the conversation, the dressing down that attorney probably got from that judge, right? So yeah, AI can do some wonderful things, but it is not necessarily bound by common sense. So something to keep in mind. Yes, there's a better way to work with it, but it still has to be kept or used in a way that it doesn't supplant your judgment. So is AI here to stay? You know, that's a big ask in the recruiting world, because I have a gentleman on an advisory board for a related company who is 100% of his career, for the most part, has been academics. He's done a couple of startups. He's been doing some advisory work. And we went round and round and round one time about why would we need recruiters when, as a candidate, my goal in a job search is to maximize my value, is to get every dollar I can on the table. So wouldn't I want my resume and my application to go out to every available job that might make sense for me? And I tried explaining to him, no, you don't. You want to control your information. There's value in that, number one. Number two, every candidate's an individual. And yeah, money has value. No one denies that. But so does the work you're doing. So does the context in which you're performing that work. So does the people around you. They matter. That culture or how you go about business matters. You try to take an actuarial accountant and place them into a controller or CFO role at a startup that just got its Series A, and that person's going to probably burst into flames because of the fast pace, the torrid pace, cadence at which things have to move. And actuarial accounting traditionally doesn't do that. and vice versa. So there are other qualitative and quantitative aspects to value and what makes sense for each candidate as well as for each hiring team. So if you look at the current state of recruitment and its pain points, these are pretty common. Communication's a big one for the reasons that we stated earlier on the prior slide. Time to fill. I did a survey with Sabretooth, my firm, last November of a bunch of CHROs and talent acquisition executives in the tech space. Not tech industry, mind you, but tech in terms of skills and background, and let's just say job sector. Time to fill was a big one because for every company we talked to, every one of them had jobs, at least a quarter of their jobs were open for more than 90 days. And over almost 80% were open over 90, had jobs that were 80% of their jobs were open, or 75% of the jobs for about 80% of that survey group were open more than 90 days. Now, if you're missing an SEC reporting director for 90 days, I would imagine that could be pretty painful in a publicly traded company. But from a recruiting perspective, there's not enough emphasis tied to how do we speed this up. Well, AI is something that can definitely address that, and as well as quality of hire. Quality of hire can be measured in a lot of different ways, but the fact is it's probably one of the biggest pain points out there from the perspective of you don't really know what you don't know. There's a known unknown. We don't know what it costs to make a bad hire. We can guess, we can assign some numbers to it, but when you talk about actually replacing that hire and the risk associated with it and training and developing a person to get up to ROI, it can get expensive. Other recruitment pain points, the cost to source because it's labor intensive, can take a lot of time. And again, the unquantified internal costs of diverting resources to fill roles that are open unnecessarily long periods of time or were a bad fill, that can cripple a company because you just don't see where it shows up as a line item on your P&L. AI, in theory, should help us address all of these. So let's talk a little bit about how does AI make a job search better? And let's talk about it from the candidate side. And I use the same slide with machine learning, generative AI, theory of the mind out there, just to highlight again, AI is not a cure-all for what ails you. It's not this special miracle medicine or snake oil that somehow is going to make any job search easier in terms of what the process is, but it can make it easier in terms of how you go about the process. So in practical terms, how does it make a job search better? Probably not as much as we'd like, right? We'd love to have something where we feed our resume into it and we feed our accomplishments into it, and it says, man, you're fantastic. You should be here, here, and here, and AI goes out and does all the work. It doesn't quite do that, but what it can do, because everybody on this call, I'm sure I can't see all of your faces, even though I keep looking over here at the side of the screen for the video screens. But what it can do, because I'm sure we all really, really enjoy producing customized cover letters. I'm sure that's everybody's favorite use of time. Now, people will tell you, especially you start moving up the food chain, it's nice to show that you care and you really want this job. But let me tell you all a dirty little secret. There's a study out, and in fact, at the end of this, you'll have my LinkedIn address. You can go find me easily under John Light at Sabretooth on LinkedIn. But there's an article I posted up where I pulled a quote out of it by this group that did a study, and what they found is that 92% of the time when a candidate starts an online application, they do not finish it. They do not finish it. So it's tedious. It's a pain in the neck. How much nicer would life be is if you could drop in 30 or 40, 50 keywords of how you want things to flow and AI generate your customized cover letter in a few heartbeats. You can attach it and send it, or you can upload it or whatever. And the same thing with producing, it could produce tailored resumes for positions, because some of the people on this call, I'll guarantee some of y'all have done so many different things in the finance and accounting world, and you're good. But where we're moving economically, generalists are going to have a more challenging time finding a job. As we say in our business, when we talk about marketing, is there's riches and niches. In other words, you got to specialize. You got to have a focus area. You got to be careful if you use AI to generate a resume, even one to tailor a resume, because just like that attorney found out, AI might decide to, I don't know, might decide to say Shazam over your resume and turn it into something it's not. And you don't want that. One of the things that AI cannot do that only you can do is genuinely be you. And you need to keep that. You don't relinquish that. You don't give it away. AI needs handholding. So anything you have to do, I don't care if it's producing a list of people for you to reach out to. I don't care if it's a job bot bringing you custom jobs every day. I don't care if it's producing cover letters or tailored resumes. You got to hold its hand, just like you would a kid or even a puppy. You're still going to have to do the work of identifying, applying, and managing your own workflow. AI can complement it and make it better. But among other things, it cannot network for you. That's one of the great things about Fing. And I always want to say Fang. I don't know why it's always been that way, but I've known the Houston president of the Houston chapter for a long time. And I know that a lot of great things comes from networking within this group. So for those of you who are here who listen on to the recording later, AI can't fill that gap for you. That only comes from face-to-face interperson reaction. So please don't forget, no matter how much you might use AI in a job search, don't set yourself aside, because AI isn't going to be there doing the job. It may be there to assist you in some capacity in a position. For example, Google's Duo does some really incredible stuff, but you're still got to be there executing on the job. AI can't do it for you. AI can't network for you. AI can't tell you, yes, this is the right job, or no, it's not, but it can get you in the ballpark, and you got to take it the rest of the way. So the limits of AI, and this is very important, I think, for everybody to keep in mind, and let's take a minute to go through. Today, now maybe not in a few years, but today it cannot empathize. It cannot empathize. The quality of empathy, the ability to empathize with people, really defines us as different in this world. And it makes a big difference too. A lot of us have high IQs. If you're a CPA, you can't be a dummy passing that exam. That thing's brutal. I think I lost all my hair back in my 20s when I sat for it. But EQ, the ability to relate with other people, emotional intelligence, the human touch, AI can't replace that. And there's huge value when it comes to leadership, when it comes to growing and developing teams and your own career, that AI can't fill in that gap. Like we said earlier, it doesn't necessarily comprehend or grasp common sense, reasoning, and understanding. If you think about that attorney and his brief, would he know, if he developed the brief or worked with a paralegal or a first-year associate, to not create out of whole cloth a brand new, non-existent U.S. District Court? Absolutely. AI didn't get that. AI has to be taught that. Tasks that, cannot understand context. Very important. Context in my world is almost everything. Context and timing. Remember, with AI, it can't be truly creative, only generative. And let me qualify that by giving you kind of a silly example. But I would imagine if we asked for a show of hands of the 38 or 40 participants we have on here, most of you most likely like the combination of peanut butter and chocolate. If you don't, I feel very sorry for you, because it's one of the greatest combinations ever on this planet. All right. Would AI by itself, as it exists, put the idea of matching those two flavors together? And the answer to that is a little more nuanced. Generally speaking, no, it won't, unless you trained it for that task specifically. What AI can't do is truly innovate, put something novel on the table. You may have seen these AI generated pieces of artwork that have been floating around that people have been trying to sell. courts are already coming down on that because it's not a genuinely newly created piece of intellectual property. Instead, it's synthesizing from the data sets that's been fed according to its algorithm, some combination of the Mona Lisa, the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and a haiku, and turning it into a picture. So it doesn't really create something new. Again, it does what it's taught to do, what it's trained to do. So tasks that require a lot of experience and intuition, it's not built for. That right there is something that comes probably more aligned with theory of the mind, and the ability to digest and process unstructured data sets. Right now, machine learning and generative AI are really, really good with structured data, where it's the same thing over and over and over again. It could be iterative. It could have very, very minute, very small variances, but it's the same data in the same format over and over and over again. That's how it learns. It processes its calculations with its algorithms gazillions of times to get to where you want it to go. So anything that's complex with unstructured data, it can't handle. For example, any given day, the trillions of cells in your brain process unstructured data in ways that scientists, neuroscientists, computer geniuses haven't figured out yet. I mean, do you even notice when you walked out, well, you all are in New York. I don't know how many of you are in New York City. I'm in Texas. If I step outside and I go to my truck, do I notice every time I walk out, do I acknowledge my truck is dark gray? I notice this in the driveway, but do I notice that it's dark gray? And when I look at that dark gray, do I appreciate the fact that, man, that is one good looking Toyota Tundra? Oh man, engine rumbles, it sits up a little high, floodwaters don't matter. We're in a drought, so that doesn't matter anyway. AI doesn't appreciate those sorts of things any more than it would appreciate what you do when you get up in the morning and you get underneath a hot shower. But all the data points that come from taking that shower, that's unstructured data, how it feels on your skin, whether or not you have soap that smells like bourbon or lavender. So again, complex, unstructured data, things that you've learned to appreciate, things that your brain just processes and deals with automatically. AI is not set up to do that, and it's a long way off from it. So it can only function within the limits of its given data. It's strictly inside the box. It does not innovate. And that is very key to understand. AI is meant to complement your ability, not to compete with it. So if you want to look at how to use it, whether you're grabbing Duo or Bard or ChatGPT or whatever it is, it's not there to replace you, and you cannot put it out as a replacement for you. It's there to complement what you do. In theory, it should help you do what you're good at more. I would also put out there the idea, and this was in a Harvard Business Review back, I want to say in May timeframe. An article I read there is that we're moving from the creator economy to an editor economy. And that tracks really strongly with the pluses and minuses, the limits that are around generative AI. There's a lot of stuff that you shouldn't have to do anymore if you have a good generative AI that is with you long enough to take on or to learn from your persona and how things should be done. And then has someone backstopping it, if you will, providing oversight, editorial oversight to make sure it's not stepping out of common sense boundaries or right or wrong boundaries. Every big company out there you can think of that's even closely related to tech, folks, they're putting billions of dollars into this, crazy amounts of money. SAP, there's an article on SAP earlier this summer, they're putting $500 million a year into AI. So imagine you have SAP, and imagine if you want to get an upgrade or you're implementing it for the first time, and they basically come out and put a box down in a metaphorical sense that has all of their algorithms, has how everything should be, that then digests or processes the data from your existing system, runs it through their models to categorize everything properly, to put all the entries in the right way according to current IFRS standards, for example. And then it auto-populates all your processes, all your financials, all your reports, everything right there. And you would have put an entry in. You don't necessarily have to have a person key an entry in. You have to have somebody have oversight over the entry, but the AI takes care of reasoning out where should it go and how it should be accounted for, what time period to put it in, matching everything properly. So keep that in mind, that the World Economic Forum estimates that AI is going to replace about 85 million jobs globally by 2025. But they estimate that it'll generate, or from the replacing, it'll create another 97 million available jobs. Now, a question was asked last time I gave this presentation is, what are those jobs going to be? And the answer I gave to that question is, I'm not 100% sure. I don't think anyone is. And that's the scary part, that the next 3 to 5 years, we're going into this sort of frontier country where we know a lot of jobs are going away. A lot of functions are going to change and never be what they were before. But we're also going to add a lot of others. What's that going to look like, and how we can get from here to there? That's going to is causing a lot of anxiety. And it's one of the reasons when we wrap this up in a few minutes, I'm completely open for Q&A on this topic, because I think there's a lot of discussion that should be had to go through it.
John, hi, it's Leora. Would it
Yeah.
be possible to give us a few examples of how to use it? You can share your screen with us so that we can see how you actually can use AI in your job search, in your application, cover letters, resumes, and thank you notes.
I don't have that set up on this machine right now. I actually have it set up on my laptop, but it's really, really simple. If you bop out to Google and you put in generative AI, you're going to get a whole host of ads that pop up on companies that provide it. And you can literally pick whichever one you want. Some will provide different service levels and whatnot. Some of them will cost you a very nominal fee, maybe around $20 a month. Some of them, like ChatGPT 3.5, is free, or still free, I believe. But if you go to 4.0, which is a much more robust version fed on a larger data set, then it's going to cost around $20 a month or so to have access to it. And then all you do is it's really simple. And that's what's crazy about it. Here's something that a guy actually interviewed for a podcast, told me, where they're using machine learning to take existing information from MRIs and do biochemical analysis of the fluids in your body, so they can predict a disease, a biochemical change, before it manifests physically in your body. In other words, they're moving to diagnose cancers, for example, before they even can get to stage 1. Okay. But here's what he told me. I had a great laugh about this. It's on a podcast on my website. Dr. Mark Lennox. He's actually one of the original scientists and engineers who developed PET scan technology in the 90s. Brilliant guy. He said, we use Python to develop, to program, to do all of our coding, all our development for machine learning. Do you know what we use to program AI? Of course, I'm interviewing him. He's asking me a question. I'm not going to, hopefully not make myself look too stupid. I said, no, I don't know. What would you use, Mark? And he goes, we use PowerPoint. That's how they program AI. And so when you get into generative AI, you literally have a box or a screen come up where all you do is put in your query, please produce for me a cover letter for a VP of finance in the retail industry based in New York City at a publicly traded company, requiring 15 years minimum of experience with an MBA, and you can put some other details in there, and it will turn around and churn out for you that text in seconds. And so what you can do is, every time you want to produce a cover letter, is just put in, fill in a blank, copy and paste if you want, please produce for me a resume cover letter for XYZ job title with these parameters. push a button, get out of the way. It spits it out. You take it, drop it into a Word document, clean it up, and you're good to go.
Okay. What parameters would they put? Would they put in the job description or
You can put
the
the job
resume?
description. You can do all of that fun stuff, including your resume. And typically, what it does, and it depends on which one you use, how you would do the inputs. But typically, you can just type the stuff in or copy and paste it in and say, "Hey, here are my parameters. Here are the job parameters. Please produce for me a cover letter that is meant for XYZ job," and it'll do it for you. But remember, you're still going to do, it's only doing 80% of the work probably at most. You still have to go in and edit it, but a 5-minute edit job or 10-minute edit job is a heck of a lot quicker than typing from scratch your cover letter. And that's where it complements what you can do, because it's not that you are unable to type out a letter or copy and paste and do your own edits. It is that it gives you a fresh generative iteration of it every time. And then you just made to make sure that it sounds like you, it's got the proper syntax, and it doesn't embellish anything. So that's probably the biggest use for a job seeker for AI today. By the end of this year, going into Q1, that's probably going to evolve as well. I know there's some startups out there that are working the problem for job seekers from the, you purchase this, their package, and it turns around, takes your resume, your ideal job descriptions, and then it goes out and finds you these jobs and applies to them, or has you apply to them. But again, that doesn't change the fact that the process is what it is. It just changes how fast you can do the process.
Okay. So really we're using it as a guide. You can just see what they generate and then write your own letter based on it, your own
Well, it's
cover
going to give you,
letter.
it's
And the
going to
same
give
thing
you,
with the thank you note at the
yeah,
end, and include things
exactly.
from the interview itself.
Exactly.
But
It's going to give you 80% of what you need. You just need to, again, you're providing editorial oversight.
okay, so ChatGPT is still a free resource that people can use, and
Yes.
basically just feed to it your resume and the job description. I've also seen on Instagram where someone showed that she got into the top 10 companies that she wanted. She was shortlisted based on putting her resume into AI, ChatGPT, I believe it was, and it customized it with the job description for her. Of course, she still had to make adjustments, she said, but she
Exactly.
said that got her shortlisted. What advice would you give on that? And what would you say to look for in order to make it as one of the top candidates with the utilization of AI?
Well, again, AI gets you 80% there. And even that particular person, she's going to have to go in on every one of those and be sure of two things. There was a great study done, man, it might have been 2009, 2010, where LinkedIn and HBR partnered up and they surveyed candidate profiles against resumes, candidate profiles on LinkedIn against resumes that were available online.
HBR,
And
Harvard Business Review?
yeah, this
Okay.
is a long time ago, but it really shocked me, and it stuck in my mind when they found somewhere about 80% of all resumes out on the internet contain some level of material omission or misstatement, error or omission, which basically means there was stuff in there that shouldn't be in there. For example, I've seen it was very common in the early 2000s and into the 2000 teens to have somebody, you're looking for someone who's installed or implemented or handled data migration or master data or whatever it is related to SAP. Well, if you're going to implement SAP, that's a chore. That's a lot of work. It's a complex system. It takes a team. But when you see somebody who's 32 years old and they lay claim that they have personally handled the entirety of it on a resume, it may get past the AI screener. It may get past the machine learning aspect of it. But anybody human reading that knows this person didn't do it. What they may have done is been involved in a module or done a piece of the larger process. But to say that you've implemented SAP as if you did it, that's the implication. While that may get it noticed through the machine learning, it's not going to get you the job. And so that's the big barrier there. Yeah, you can get noticed with this stuff, and you can customize, let's say, tailor, edit your resume to really fit a job description. But you have to be careful that you don't cross the line to where that resume is no longer you. It has to speak to what you've done. And that can be very challenging. For example, when you look at a job description, 95, 98% of the job descriptions out there are built about responsibilities and requirements. Human resources, talent acquisition teams, they're not marketing, and they should be. Job descriptions should be built around, here's the impact the company's going to have on you. Here's the bigger story we want you to come have an impact on and render value to. This bigger story we want you to be a part of. It should be something exciting. In fact, the first year, your first 12 months, we want you to accomplish these 5 goals. And these 5 goals are going to help our company reach, whatever our goal is. But job descriptions aren't written like that. When you look at a resume, people fall into the trap of listing tons of responsibilities. And let me tell you something from a recruiting perspective. Once I've read a bullet or two of it, please stop. It hurts. It doesn't tell me what you are. It doesn't teach me anything about your persona or your impact. So you want to have bullet points and sections on your resume that are what we call the STAR principle: situation, task, action, result. My situation is I was controller, division controller at Waste Management for South Texas. My task was, as we merged with USA Waste and Waste Management merged, and part of my task, the problem I had to solve was we had to merge 2 very separate billing systems, one very centralized, one very decentralized. Here are the actions I took to lead that charge. Here are the quantified results we got, or quantified projected results. If you don't keep a tight leash on your AI, it's going to turn around and make you into something you're not. And when you get into an interview and you're asked about it, then you got problems. Getting on a short list is one thing. You're still going to have to get through the rest of the process. And again, AI can get you 80% of the way there. That's your short list. But that other 20%, it's all you. And so again, use AI. Use it to make things faster. Free up more time in your day to go squeeze your kids, to go fishing, to frolic, whatever it is that you do you, to expand your skills in some other area. But don't let it off the leash, because at the end of the day, AI is not going to go execute the job. It's why I mentioned this earlier. You got to do it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, use it as a guide. Let it give you ideas, but don't take it verbatim.
Right. And I'm going to, if that's okay, I'm going to stop sharing this because I'd love to see, if that's okay, Leora.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So I can start with the questions also.
Yeah,
Go
please.
through here. I know somebody had asked about putting at the end of their resume all the required skills in white to get it through the ATS system. I've heard before that's not a good idea. It comes out in black on the other end for the recruiter, and they can see the trick that the person did.
They can, if they're savvy to it. Yes. I would suggest this, I shared the statistic earlier that this one group studied, and they said about 92% of all applicants don't finish online applications because they're too complex. And I mean, if I asked for a show of hands right now and everybody to say you've run into an application online that you didn't complete, I'd imagine 100% of the people would raise their hand and say, yeah, no. Some of them are, they're awful. They're evil. They're evil. There's a great guy on LinkedIn. If you ever want to have a good laugh, he's actually, I think he's in New York. His name is Adam Karpariak, I think is how you pronounce it. But he has he was a F&A recruiter specifically in public accounting firms, but he has this whole meme thing going on about how hard companies make it to apply for a job. And it's just brutal what some of these companies do, and it's unnecessary. So when you look at it, traditional ATS, and this is where AI could help over time, I think, from the talent acquisition viewpoint of a corporation, over time, not today, but in the near future. When you look at a resume, traditional ATSs are very buzzword, keyword focused. That's what they're taught to look for. How many times does this person's resume say CPA? How many times does it say financial reporting? How many times does it say whatever the key word or phrase is? The problem with it, and I don't know Chris Franz, but it looks like you already found Adam's LinkedIn page and put it in the chat. The problem is what does that really tell you about the candidate? It doesn't tell you zippity doodah about them, other than they've got keywords and buzzwords everywhere. A density of keywords does not a resume make. And so as AI progresses from the talent acquisition standpoint, I think they'll actually cut through some of that. Because if 90+% of the people don't finish an application, and at any given time, only 27% of the available talent pool will actually start an online application, you're already dealing with a very limited talent pool. But they are weeding out so many people unnecessarily on the keyword searches on the ATS side that people will never have, they'll never have the opportunity to find out who's really behind the paper. So one of the bullet points in the presentation, and to be very clear on this, is AI, you still got to do the networking. AI can't do it for you. Okay. You're still going to have to go through the steps and efforts. And for a lot of organizations that you all will apply to, judging just by the face I'm seeing on the screen, you're largely not going out and applying for entry-level positions here and stuff like that. Okay. But if you're going to go apply for a controller role, accounting manager, FP&A, director of FP&A, something of that nature, on LinkedIn, you can typically find out where that role reports. And if I were you and you apply on a role, that's great. Reach out and connect with who you think is that role's going to report to. Say hello. You don't have to push anything. You don't have to raise a flag and say, hire me, but say hello. And if you're really looking hard for a job, I would suggest being active on LinkedIn too, because savvy internal recruiters will always go and find you on LinkedIn. And if your LinkedIn profile looks wonky or there's no activity on it, they usually take that as a red flag. Okay. So I would highly suggest at least a couple times a week, do something on there that registers an activity, like something, congratulate someone else for finding a job, share an article that you found interesting, but be active. But to your point, though, there's really right now doing the words in white on the bottom of a resume. It's a gimmick. Right. And if somebody wants to go the gimmick route, and when you are found out, it's going to discombobulate your process. Right. So why take the risk?
Exactly. And to your point about activity on LinkedIn, also the contact information should be there, full contact information. And again, in the summary, because not every recruiter has access to the contact information that's on the LinkedIn, and they will just skip over to the next candidate if they can't reach you easily. Not everybody has so many in-mails that they can send you.
And if you want to have a little bit of fun, everybody likes to have a little bit of fun once in a while, right? If you go to post on LinkedIn, you can now post using their AI. So if you go up to start a post, it's going to give you a prompt to use their AI, enter at least 30 words that it recognizes, and then it will write a post for you that you can edit and post up and all that other fun stuff. So, I mean, that's how close it's getting to everything we do. I'm waiting for the day when we go into a car dealership or online and have AI develop the perfect vehicle for us, and we can just custom order it.
We have a question in the chat. Great info. What is the time to fill ratio between engineering versus non-engineering candidates? Is the AI effort efficacy different between engineering versus non-engineering?
Are we talking engineering in the tech world or more like mechanical engineering?
Chris, would you like to elaborate on that? You can unmute yourself.
You were just throwing around interesting stats. A lot of the AI stuff I've been working with for a while now, but I hear everything you're saying, and I still find great value. But
there's absolutely great value. It's just you got to manage it.
Right, but you were identifying ratios of fill rates and time to fill and things like that, and I'm always interested to see how that ebbs and flows from a CFO level. And so when I think about this split, it's always in my mind between engineering and non-engineering. So think more classical software, tech engineering, because that seems to be the boat anchor for a lot of recruiting efforts, where they struggle because there's such a an over demand on engineering and such a short supply.
Yeah, and there's a lot of evolutions happening when you talk about software engineering in general. There are companies that are now, suppose you have 14 coders, you can use generative AI to produce most of your code and let go of 10 of those people and keep
Right.
4 to provide editorial oversight, so to speak. So any ratios that are out there in that space right now, I think, are subject to what the market is doing today and will be doing tomorrow with respect to that. What we found in our survey, it's available on my website. We touched 50 executives, and the numbers we got just showed that the vast majority of those companies, when it came to tech recruiting, we're talking machine learning, AI, we're talking about, included in their general software engineers, developers, to try and get a very broad view of it. And nearly 80% have somewhere between 25 and 75% of their tech roles go unfilled for over 90 days. Now, I've run in, when I did F&A work almost exclusively, I found a lot of F&A roles that were open for 90 plus days. But I was except for the time period that I had 8 markets across the country, but when I was focused here in the Houston market, some of the things that pop out to me is I did an SEC role for a large chemical company. And the only reason they used me, the only reason they reached out to me, is it had been open for 355 days. So a lot of it, I think, depends on the company that the statistics is coming from and how they approach the market. So when you look at it a larger aggregate, and I wish our survey had been 500 instead of 50, but we were just a startup at the time, so we were still trying to work on our name recognition and defining our brand and how we were going to go to market. So we needed a starting point. But even from 50, I think those numbers are scary, because it's an indicator that time to fill is a big issue everywhere in the tech space. Everywhere.
We're getting more questions coming into the chat.
Yeah.
So one of the questions I'd like to ask is, we've all seen so many movies, and people are concerned about AI going rogue with code, even with editorial oversight. Is there any fear of that really in the real world with companies? Are they loath to start using AI in their companies, and are they allowing it at jobs as well to do their own work?
So and I don't mean to throw this out like clickbait, but all of you are more than welcome to go to my website and go to the podcast page, because every other Tuesday we drop a new episode, and I've got a number of CIOs and CTOs we've already put the production, it's already in the can, and they're rolling out. That specific question or that specific scenario came up with a CIO of a very large global company. I think he's got 600 people in his organization across 22 or 32 countries, so it's pretty big. And they're looking at Google's Duo, which is an AI assistant that works within G Suite, that, man, I need an email to go to such and such about whatever. It generates it for you, you edit it, and you send it. The problem comes in when you lack controls over that editorial oversight. There's got to be that compliance, and it's actually controls and compliance is one of the places, or two of the places rather, I think there's going to be a lot of future opportunities. And I hope it's not a SOX implementation part 2 or part 3 or whatever it's up to by now, where it goes great guns for 2 or 3 years and then the problems effectively, the systems are all in place. But yeah, companies are hesitant because they don't know what their people are going to do. And they're also afraid because they don't understand they can't quantify the true impact on employees' productivity. Right now, I had a client years ago that if you left your desk and went down the hall to the bathroom, they knew about it because you had to cart in and out of the bathroom, in and out of the office space, and you had to do this and do that, which was insane to me. But everything else about it was fantastic. A lot of people wanted to go there, so we did a lot of business. But I met other clients where they don't really care on a professional basis if you had to put 2 solid hours of hard work in a day and were kind of kick back the rest, or if you had to put 12. You're professional, you're expected to do it. But companies, corporate level, people don't look at it that way. They want to squeeze as much juice out of the fruit as they can in terms of productivity. So I think there's a lot of unknowns in that area. Are companies afraid of applying it right now? Yes. The companies that aren't afraid of it right now, everybody's watching. And it'll be interesting to see what develops over the next 2 or 3 years. Because in 2019, everyone on this call likely spent a lot of time in the office. Today, a lot of companies don't do that. You're working from home in a hybrid model, or maybe work from home 100% or whatever it is. And corporations are struggling with, we got to get people back in the office. AI can change that. AI can make it to where, having those helpful, that assistant like a Duo or a Bard sitting out there, why exactly do I need to be in the office to do X? I can do it right here, oversee it, hit it electronically, and it's done.
But I know that companies are also looking at how many keystrokes, and they've already mentioned, some companies, that there are more keystrokes when people are in the office rather than out of the office. So
yep. And that's but that's going to change with AI too. If I have to give AI 30 words to produce a 3,000 word paper, what are my keystrokes going to be like? How are you going to judge me then? Because now I'm doing real brain work, theoretically, right? But where it's going to hit people are repetitive jobs. For example, AP and AR. Over and over and over again. AI, you get an optical scanner, it sees what's there, boom, there's your entry. Boom, there's your entry. Boom, put this in the next check run, so on and so forth. So
we're getting more questions. So let's go back a little bit to AI and job search. Someone asked a question, Alyssa, would you agree that AI is removing the human factor in the search process?
That it's removing it?
Yes, that AI is removing the human factor in the search process.
Well, I define the search process a little bit differently, probably because I'm very biased. I don't think you can ever get rid of the human touch or the human factor. I would prefer to look at it as complementing what you do, the human side of it, and maybe even amplifying it, so that when you do have an interaction, a face-to-face, a email communication of some kind of exchange, it's going to count for more. It's going to count for more because you're going to be judged, and you're judging them based on how they come across. So is it taking the human factor out to a degree? Yes, but it's not taking the human factor out to the degree that it's the sole determinant of success or not. That's still going to come down to diligence, putting in the hard work, and staying persistent about what you're targeting.
So Anne is asking, she said that she heard that ChatGPT, even though someone created their own letter and they used a particular part of the text from ChatGPT, it can be asked, was any part of this letter generated by ChatGPT? And some hiring managers may not care, but others may, that you used ChatGPT at all.
I wouldn't personally care, and I haven't encountered anyone who does, unless it reads and screams when you read it, it was created by AI. Again, it'll get you 80% there, maybe 75%. You still got to make sure your persona's in it, that your personality comes through, and that there's no incorrect embellishing, or for that matter, incorrectly leaving out something relevant.
So Anne has another one. Thank you for an interesting discussion thus far. A few questions if there is time. Do you have any data on correlation between successful hires, retention rates with AI-driven recruiting? And then I'll ask more. Maybe you can think of it and answer it all together. Can you elaborate on the variables used in screening training perhaps demographics outside of location, if there are any. Also, similar to Alyssa's questions, any thought on present future use of AI for C-suites in the recruiting industry? Everyone, best to put each question separately in the future. Thanks.
Okay. No, all relevant questions. I don't have some set of statistics in front of me because I haven't, the companies that are using it at the highest volume are your FANGs, basically, your Amazons, your Facebooks, your Googles, and so on and so forth. Because I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but Google just let go of a ton of recruiting staff, like a lot, 100 plus. And when all these tech layoffs were happening over the past year and a half, 2 years, yeah, were some coders let go? Yeah. Were some engineers let go? Yeah. Admin and recruiting staff and all that it was a bloodletting. Lots of people hit the market. And it's because they had developed their own AI, which gets the resume. Say you get 100 resumes, it'll knock it down to what it thinks is the best 5 to put in front of the hiring team, or in front of a final recruiter for vetting to go to the hiring team. So again, instead of, is one of those scenarios where I have 5 team members on a recruiting team, I only need 1 because there's a lot less volume. How is it going to impact the C-suite? I mean, there's multiple ways. Of course, everybody in a corporation, a big company, the C-suite is going to want to utilize it to cut cost and to be more efficient. And yeah, it takes time. If you have 100 resumes in front of you, it takes time to go through them. How does it impact getting into the C-suite as a job seeker? You know, I was fortunate when I first got into the headhunting business. I worked with who at the time was a solo practitioner, a guy named Mike Charbonnier, and Mike was a long-term hardcore headhunter. And the big difference between what most corporate talent acquisition teams do and most contingent recruiters do is that they're very passive. They put ads out and they wait for people to come to them and they vet them. And look, some of those ads, I've seen ads on LinkedIn that garner 1,000+ resumes sent. Those easy applies and whatever. And it's an insane number. I mean, are there 1,427 people qualified to do X in St. Louis? Well, maybe working at a Subway. I don't know if they're qualified to be an AI engineer, for example, but you'll see those kind of numbers. They want that speed efficiency, but in my experience, C-suite roles, yeah, there could be some database work and yeah, there could be some LinkedIn work, but when it's something that goes to a retained firm, in theory, and this is how I was trained in doing it, it's hardcore outbound effort. You're calling, you're doing outreach and engaging with people and bringing them into the pipeline because they want to be in the pipeline, because the role makes sense for them, not because they're applying online. So how would AI help that? I think it would help it the same way it helps me today. It can do the basic work of developing outreach campaigns, letters, advertisements, in the sense of, we send them directly to people and talk to people about them directly. But I don't know that it's going to make getting into the C-suite as a job seeker a whole lot different from what it's been over the years, at least not today. Otherwise, everybody who has a degree from let's just say a second-tier university, might as well just pack it up and become an entrepreneur or be happy being middle management, because it's going to have a huge bias. And that's one of the major issues with AI, by the way, a huge bias for people who graduated from an Ivy League school or, from some other big name university that has a great reputation for, say, engineering, like A&M or UT here in Texas. You also have to be very careful when you look at AI, and this is going to be when it comes to recruiting in the C-suite, and from a compliance standpoint, you could easily build in a bias that you don't want anyone who graduated school for a job or a band of jobs after 2010 or before 2010. Easily do that. Or how about before the year 2000? Well, now we're starting to get into ageism. We're starting to get into this bias that is causing discrimination. Or we only want people who graduated from schools that we know are all male or all female. Oh, it's because of their academic reputation. Yeah, but now you're discriminating. So those biases, AI can fall right into it, even if it's not programmed for them specifically. So they, the C-suite level, and then the next step down, you got to be real careful with those sorts of kind of implicit biases that get built into the system. I don't know if that answers the totality of the question, because I just don't have the statistics from the Microsofts of the world yet, but I'm sure those will be popping out soon, because all those terms, and Amazon just announced they went to the AI recruiting for a lot of mid-level jobs and below related to warehousing and logistics, I want to say in March of this year. So I'd anticipate sometime in the first half of next year, we start seeing and hearing about their improvement or lack thereof. They're not going to announce much of anything if they don't improve.
How can someone use AI in order to do a search for roles that are acceptable, that they would be skilled in, rather than just trying to do a regular Google search? Is there a way that it can accumulate all the data for them in a better way than just doing a typical Google search?
I haven't used it in that specific way yet, but I know of people who have. And from what I've been told about it, is that there are generative AI packages that you can do that sort of thing with and have it go out and find on the web. Does it use Google as a search engine or Bing or whatever? I don't know. I imagine that Google's AI uses Google, and Microsoft's uses Bing, and so on and so forth. I would tell you that if you have a quality aggregator out there, which LinkedIn is not an aggregator, but an aggregator would be someone like Indeed, where they pull jobs from all over the web and put it there. That information's already there, and they already have their own internal AI in their search system working to find that stuff. So my suggestion would be, if you want to expand your search parameters, to use an aggregator to find it, and then go directly or whatever. But even if you do that, my belief is that you're always better off, again, figuring out the company you want to be at and the work you want to do, that intersection, if you will, identifying the possibilities. Whether they have ads out or not is irrelevant, and start doing outreach, connecting with people. If there's a company group that's open on LinkedIn, join it. Why not? Because again, the closer you get to networking, the more of it you do. In my experience, typically the better off you are at a senior level. If you're talking AP, AR, staff accounting, maybe senior accountants, a little bit different animal then. But as you develop your skill set and you mature your career path, you cannot neglect that aspect of it.
Okay. Any final tips with AI for us in order to facilitate our job search and land sooner?
Yeah. Just remember to use it as a compliment to what you are. People hire you for what you are. People hire you for what you do. Your resume needs to reflect your accomplishments, your quantifiable accomplishments. That will drive, in most situations, that will actually drive a lot of the interview conversation when you get to an interview. Be human, be you, be genuine, and be persistent. Just because you get a no, that doesn't always mean no. And I would tell you too, the more you support other people around you who are in the same boat, I think that you'll find that the better off your job search will go. It's the old proverb that, if you put a stick together or by itself, it breaks really easy. But you bundle 2, 3, 4, 5 together and you support one another, it's a lot stronger. So we're human beings, not machines in that regard. We need that interaction. We need that support. So go be you and advertise you and what you bring to the table by virtue of the value impact you've had over your career. And that's what's going to get you noticed faster than AI, frankly, because the companies that are buzzword heavy, keyword search heavy, they're a hard hurdle to get over to get into those companies. And there are reasons for that. And in my experience, most of the FANG members I've worked with, you are all unique individuals that have really robust skill sets that have value. And we just got to make sure that you communicate that in an impactful way. And that's where AI can be most helpful, is helping make that easy so you can do more of those communications and get yourself to the results you're looking for faster.
To that point, Bill McCullough has a question. Everyone, please remember to proceed with the word question in caps so that I can identify it. How can we use AI to determine if our resume will be considered a good fit for the role the advertised role and it's worth applying for? We all know about jobspam.co already. What would you say about other AI resources?
Yeah, look, just going on the Google where they got rid of all of their recruiters and they're relying on AI. How do you know that the AI is going to pick you? And so whether it's worth your time to invest to submit an application.
Would have to get it and look at their algorithms, right? Their code. I mean, the only way you know it is by virtue of experience. But I think in a lot of cases, the standards still apply. And look, they didn't get rid of all the recruiters, but if they had 10 supporting a division or a group, maybe they only need 2 now or 3, right? But over the size of the company, that's a lot of people that they no longer need. What I find interesting about that, side note, it's kind of like Robert Half back in the day, back in the 70s and 80s, when it was really exploding, right, with their contingent recruiting. And Robert Half trained its competition. And a lot of people don't step back and think about it, but it trained its competition. There are consulting firms I know here in the Houston market where Big Four firms basically train their competition. You're not good enough to be a partner here. And some guys and gals get together and say, you know what, forget you, Jack. We're going to go be a competitor in this specific field. And I've seen a lot of them who've exploded with growth. I could name a couple of names that really, if Deloitte and EY went back and thought about it, they'd realize, well, that was really stupid. You know, we could have gotten a lot more value out of these people. But big companies, because by virtue of how they're doing this analytically, they're not looking at that. They're not even trying to play Moneyball in the sense of, let me bring this eclectic group of people together, but I know that as a whole, they're much greater than any individual. Companies don't think that way, even though they give lip service to it. So if they need to hire an SEC reporting analyst, what are they going to want? They're going to CPA with 3 to 5 years of experience coming out of one of the Big Four firms. And their bias is going to be to ignore all other firms, or someone who hasn't completed the exam or a requirement, or someone who has perhaps done that job in industry is going to maybe be on the long list and not the short list because they don't have public accounting experience. So how do we know that it aligns? You could always grab the AI from that company that they offer in the market and ask them, hey, AI, please review my resume against this job description at Google. Ask Duo to do that, and then turn around and see what it tells you.
How do you know which AI they're using?
Well, it's going to be internally developed. Like I said, until you see the algorithms, you don't know for sure. And that's the downside to it. And the plus side, side note, everybody on the phone should be aware of this. When you get a generative AI package, you start using it, be careful on the legal language, because all your data is now their data. Right? And that could be an issue, because what they're trying to do, these first movers, are trying to corner the market on the data, which they have largely. Google certainly has, right? Because data's power, because now they can market to you at a way and a scale that is obscene. It's even worse than it's been up to this point. So there are a lot of pitfalls out there. And I think there is going to be a wave of entrepreneurialism out there developing AIs and applications thereof, which I think is a critical part. That it's just going to be an interesting ride, right? We can't have any company controlling the entire market. And that's the scary part, because you don't know what's going on under the table.
Well, I think we already have that with Alexa and Siri on our phones, because they are listening to everything we say, and they are looking at everything we type, because anytime you send a text out or you talk about a topic, the next thing you know, you see ads for it.
Yep. If
So
you say
they,
kitty litter, even if you don't have a cat, next thing you know, somebody's sending you a coupon.
right. So we're getting a lot of that. So another question that I have is, now that we know how to find the jobs, is there any way that AI can help us with predicting what kind of questions will be asked on the interview based on what's out there on YouTube and other sources, on people that have taken Glassdoor, who have had interviews with that particular company, and even for that kind of particular role?
That's a good question. I would suggest just, and I haven't done that, I suggest getting the AI and telling it to go scan the internet for questions that other candidates for this company have been asked. Glassdoor tries to do that, but it's dependent on what people enter. But that's what I would do, because none of them take these interviews and publish them. They don't record them and publish them to where you have access to them. So odds are you're probably going to get back a lot of generic questions. So that's a heck of a question. I'd probably go ask AI to find out and to scan the web and see what it would come up, or to generate a list of probable questions based on the job description and my resume.
Okay. Anybody else have any other final questions? 1 second. I have found multitudes of interview questions with a variety of roles within LinkedIn.
And people will share those from time to time, and it accumulates, but that doesn't mean it's going to be the same every time. I do tell people it's a good exercise if you haven't interviewed in a while. Even if you have, it's a good exercise to get sample interview questions, and it could be a general list, or you could find something on LinkedIn like he suggests, or Glassdoor, and handwrite out your answers, 2 to 5 sentences for them. And it's important to handwrite out. It creates a neurological link to your memory. It works a lot better. But then stand in front of a mirror or video yourself answering those questions, and really listen to how those answers come across. And put yourself in the shoes of the interviewer. If I hear this, what am I going to think about it? And if it doesn't sound right, go back and rework it and redo the exercise. But a lot of it, when you get in, isn't so much the questions that you're asked, it's how you approach the answer. And if you keep to the STAR format, situation, task, action, result, and you're practiced at taking stuff from your head that you've accomplished in the past and articulating it, which is what that exercise makes you do, you're going to have stronger answers.